Hi everyone, I thought today I'd do a quick video on the creative process and how I did elements of the cover artwork for Castle Itter that I did with David Thompson, and again it's published by DVG. As you can see, I've got my physical copy here and really looking forward to getting it on the table. So starting at the beginning, this is a very simple sketch that I did for the cover, and it came from a conversation I had with David Thompson about an idea he had for the cover, sort of a composition idea. He had this idea around this Allied tank being in the gatehouse of the castle, and that's when I did the research for the game. I'd read about that, so I thought it was a really good idea, and it helped a lot with the composition point of view, because it gave you a nice sort of centerpiece and frame, so that the tank is framed within the doorway of the gatehouse that you can see here. And as you can see, the sketch is really super rough, and that's pretty much how I start drawing. Really, the software that I use is called Sketchbook. It's a pretty simple piece of software. You can see there's not too many tools. So you're pretty much using a pencil, and you can increase the size of the there we go, like that, and it's obviously sensitive to the pressure that you put on with your pen. I use a Wacom pen and tablet, so a small tablet, and as I apply more pressure, as you can see, so in that respect, it's quite, even though it's digitally, it's similar to working traditional. It has the advantage, obviously, I can just change that quite quickly by applying more pressure rather than having to reach for additional pencils and things like that. So it sort of streamlines the whole process. And yeah, it is pretty rough, and you can see that I've got some indication, thoughts about where the sort of lighting area would be, and that I felt that this would look strong with a sort of a really darker than it would be if it was a photograph, for example, within the sort of the castle. So that's why that's like that. And if we look at the sort of finished, let's just strain it up, the finished piece compared to the compared to the sketch that I did, then that's obviously that's the finished cover art, and that's the sketch. So you can see, it's just move that across there so that we can see them sort of next to each other. Let's move all these tools out of the way. Yeah, you can see next to each other, pretty similar actually. I think I had originally more ideas about putting more detail on the tracks under here. And I think, if I remember, when I first started doing the colour work, I kept with that in mind. And then as I sort of painted, I kind of brought the blacking up into this. So this area here was under shadow, like that. But yeah, actually pretty similar. Sort of the turret is sort of very similar. The actual building itself, pretty much. And I think from the research that I did, again, this is where there's sort of a certain amount of artistic license. This part of the castle here would actually been way over more to the left, but in the composition, I had this idea about putting the main castle parts in the background, like that. But in reality, if you went to Castle Itter and took a photograph of this location within this composition, this sort of angle, this wouldn't be here. It'd be more way to the left. But I felt that was a strong piece for the cover to show that there's a sort of a massive castle in the background, which alludes to to some of the gameplay as well. And again, yeah. So that's kind of the sketch. And I'd sent this to David. We kind of iterated on it a few times, if I recall. But yeah, it's pretty much the composition is very much his idea, and I can take no credit for that at all. but it really helped, and it helped. Like I said, from the sort of framing point of view, so that it could frame the tank, and also it leads the eye in because you have a sort of a focus point, but also that it's within the castle, so it gives some sense of grounding the main focus, which is the tank, into the sort of area, I guess you'd say, or the vicinity and the world in which everything exists. So yeah, so let's just close that, and let's have a look at the actual cover in the software. So as you can see, Sketchbook is the sort of software that I've used. I've used it for quite a few years now. There are other drawing applications, I guess you could use. I use this one because from a software point of view, it's pretty simple. So I have the tools that I need, and not too much clutter. So obviously there's more. Photoshop is the one that a lot of people use, but it has a huge amount of array of different things. This is much more simple. So it means you can focus on the drawing and the painting, I think. So this is done. The cover is actually done in a tool painting style called Chisel Tip, and what Chisel Tip does is, to draw an example, let's just make a really big chisel tip. So it looks like that. So as you can see, there's like it's not circular like a paintbrush or flat like a pencil, but it also means as you rotate, you get this effect here where the line thins. So depending on the angle, there you go, for example, that was straight down and that was to the side. So the angle here means you get a much thinner line than you do here. I've used this sort of technique quite a lot in my work. So if I zoom in onto the sort of detail, you can see these are all chisel tip brush marks that I've done, and I'm drawing painting at a size 10 sort of chisel tip. So it's pretty small. If I zoom out, zoom back in slowly. Let's just do a new piece here. Let's take a sample of that colour and let's put one just right there so we can see the contrast. So that piece there, and if I zoom right out to there, so I'm not drawing and painting at this level very much. I'm drawing and painting much more like this. So this is the real canvas. This is probably the size in which I would be painting at. So that's the tank. To give you some sense of scale. That's how I would be painting. Maybe even at times more like this. So that if I wanted to be painting very much like that sort of scale. Not at this. That's not detailed enough for me. So much more like that. And that's one of the advantages that I found of drawing digitally. It means I can kind of zoom in and out as I please for the piece that I'm doing. The other big advantage is that because I'm using a laptop, it means that when I'm done, I just close the laptop. And I have small children, so leaving the stretched canvas and oils out with lots of little kids, maybe that wouldn't work out so well. So that's one of the things that one of the reasons I do it in this way. Get rid of that. Thank you. What I felt was important with this piece was that the piece of let's just get rid of some of these brush marks. Is that I'm just going to do that while I talk. Is that the tank wanted so that it felt like it existed. I keep using that word, existed in the world. So what I like about this project was that it's a very unusual battle, and it's called one of the strangest battles of World War II. Is that there's this tank in this very old castle, and that is it's not on a traditional battlefield in that respect. So that was one of the things that I really, really drew me to the project. And when David contacted me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in this idea? I've got this game in doing some of the artwork for it, I did the research, and it's an amazing story. So I just kind of jumped at the chance. Plus, I knew David from Pavlov's House game, which I thought was a wonderful game. And obviously, DVG are a very reputable publisher. They make great games. So, yeah, I jumped at the chance. But really, it was this sort of this vision that he had for the game, and just the setting of the game was really unique and really different. So that was really cool. So the palette of the tank, obviously the tank is it's a very certain set colour. And I've drawn this tank a few times, this type of tank a few times before. I'm lucky enough to live here in the UK, and I took my wife and the kids camping a couple of years ago, I think it was. We went down to the Tank Museum at Bovington, and while we were there, they actually had this tank from the film Fury, was actually in the museum. So I've got loads of great photos, reference photos of some of the details, especially around the tracks as track links, or one of those things that I obsess about, and the bogies and the suspension of the tank. So I got some great reference from that, so that really helped. And I had drawn this type of Sherman a couple of times, so yeah, again, that really helped. But from an artistic point of view, it's got a very distinct colour and silhouette shape. Plus, it has this. The Sherman has this nice. It's quite a tall tank compared to some others, so that sort of fitted the space really nicely. And so, from a tank point of view, I can't let you into a little secret of mine. It's probably not really that secret at all, actually. Is that I really enjoy the composition of the tank hull facing one direction, and the tank turret and the gun facing a very different direction. And that's one of the advantages of drawing tanks that have turrets compared to, say, tank destroyers like Panthers or something like that, where the gun is sticking in the turret. So the Sherman here has a different, and what that does, I feel, is that it gives the tank a more lived-in, alive look, so that you feel as the viewer that there's men inside and they're operating the tank, and the tank is looking for targets, I'll call them, or the enemy, because it's actively pointing in a different direction to the hull. And it gives also this nice sort of composition effect of the composition line from here kind of going this way, looking this direction, and the hull going in a very different direction. So you get this nice kind of composition point of view. And that is amplified by the composition here of the path leading the viewer in the viewer's eye to the centerpiece, which is here. And then that is very deliberately different to the angle of the building, which is much more flat, straight on. So you have this turret with this composition and viewpoint, kind of directional this way, the chassis very differently, and then the building is much more flat on. And I felt that was quite an interesting and quite a nice, or certainly a visually attractive composition perspective. And like I said, I deliberately did this doorway very black. And it would, like, if you'd photographed this piece of architecture, it wouldn't be like that. It wouldn't be as black as this. But it helped silhouette the tank into the piece, which I really enjoyed. As I said, the Sherman I've drawn a few times, and it's one of my favourite tanks to draw. The Sherman, and it's post because of its shape, because it is tall, and that's always interesting. And one of the unique things about this particular type of Sherman, compared to other earlier Shermans in the war, is it has a different suspension and bogey sort of set up, different tracks, so much wider, and it has a muzzle brake on the 76mm gun. And I kept the 50 cal on the top. Certainly some of the things I've read, 50 cals were, towards the end of the war, were actually taken off. Generally, the crews didn't need them so much. They were more used as a anti-aircraft capacity. But I think I toyed with leaving it on and off. But I like the fact that it breaks up the sort of horizontal line of the turret top there. So you've got the commander's sort of cupola here, but this really broke that up. So it helped, I feel, certainly from an artistic point of view, and it gives the tank a little bit more presence inside the gateway there. And yeah, I mean, one of the probably thing to call out is that the texture of the gatehouse here is quite weathered. This took a considerable amount of time, and I kept going backwards and forwards, cleaning it up and making it more smooth, and then weathering it again and cleaning it up. And in the end, I weathered it quite significantly with a lot, as you can see, a lot of chisel tip marks. So these, you are spending a long time just drawing these in here, using the palette. Here's a palette, for example. So, that's that colour there, sampled it, and I can move that about just a little bit, and then put that on there, and then sample it again, move it about a little bit, put that in there. And this just takes a lot of time and a lot of patience. But I really wanted, for this sort of weathered effect, because I'd weathered the tank quite extensively as well, so that it again helps it make it look real, lived in. It's not a showcase, not a showroom type vehicle, obviously. So the weathering on the side. So I felt that with the tank being quite weathered and sort of in that effect, that to make it feel like the tank was in that same sort of world as this, I weathered the front of the building quite a lot, and then that is very much in contrast to the sort of flora, so the organic material here, and that is bled in. Some of the colours are bled in from here into here. So these greens up here are the same. Some of the same greens in here, and they are very different greens, for example, or browns, to the actual Sherman piece itself. And again, that's very deliberate, so that the viewer is those distinct components of this piece. So you've got the building, the building in the background, the sky, the actual tank itself, and the organic growth here. And they're all very different, but they all, I tempted so they all to try to the viewer look like they coexisted in that same world. And yeah, there we go. How long did it take to do? A long time is the honest answer. It helped that the Sherman I'd drawn before, so tanks that, generally speaking, the first time I draw a tank, it's the very first time I've ever drawn, that takes a huge amount of time. And the Sherman I had drawn this type of Sherman several times, so I knew the sort of palette, I knew the composition and some of the detail of the vehicle. The track treads are one of the things that take the longest, and the running, I call it the running gear, the wheels, the suspension, the bogies, they can take a considerable amount of time, especially the first time. But I've done this one before, so that helped a lot. The building took quite a long time. And I don't draw and paint in sittings, so, or very long sittings. So these pieces are done as a hobby. It's not the case that I'm full time doing this kind of thing. So weekends and evenings, a couple of months, I'll broadly say, I think, to do this piece, working at the weekends and working every, most evenings, sometimes for an hour, sometimes for a couple of hours. Saturday morning's a good time for me. The kids are, kind of watching cartoons and chilling out a little bit, and I'll sit and draw with my laptop. So normally quite a good opportunity to do that. So I think that's probably kind of hopefully giving you some insight into some of the thinking behind the piece. Obviously, from an art point of view, this is kind of one of those things when you look at a piece that you haven't looked at for a little while, is I keep wanting to tweak things, I just want to get into this star here and just maybe just sort that bit out there. Well, no, maybe not. You know what I mean? So it's probably true to say, and I think a lot of people, a lot of artists, and other people who create things, it's never really ever done, ever finished. It's just a point in time that you kind of have to say that's it. It's David and the guys at DVG have to get this thing to the printers. It's always things that I would always want to tweak and change for a very long time. A couple of months, I guess, excuse me, to do it from start to finish, something like that. But hopefully giving you guys some insight into sort of some of the thinking behind the cover, and some of the sort of artistic decisions, choices that I made in producing it. I have to say, David Thompson was great to work with. So I can take no credit for the composition idea. It was all his, and his attention to historical detail is something that I greatly admire, and very similar in sort of wavelengths to mine around the actual art pieces of the idea. So that was great. So hopefully you've that's been hopefully interesting for those who've got the game or thinking about buying the game. Give you some insight into how it's done. So anyway, thank you, and thanks for watching.